And we're live. So, yeah, episode 2 of the Unnamed podcast. Um, once again, the thing with this podcast is we're going to be talking about motivation today. So I might have to consider changing the whole premise of this podcast. The original idea is to try to find out um, where martial arts and technology kind of converge. But we haven't really done that yet, have we?
Nope.
Yeah. So we need to see if we can try to find if we can continue with that niche, or at least start with that niche and find more things that we can talk about towards that end. Otherwise, we will have to reconsider the format of this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the meantime, let's talk about motivation, because that's a tough one for martial arts now, isn't it?
Yes.
So uh, going into what I've started, so I first started with Tai Chi, and shortly after that began Wing Chun. As we talked about in the last episode, I recently quit Kendo. What else am I doing? Fencing. I'm still doing that.
Kingy.
Yeah. What else am I doing still? Oh, because our style of Tai Chi incorporates elements of Xing Yin Ba Gua. Our Tai Chi master had me starting Xing Yi like 3 months ago. So I've been doing that. Unfortunately, this is why we're talking about motivation, or this is why I want to talk about motivation, is because I've been doing Xing Yi for at least 1 hour a day at his behest, or at least trying to, and then I'm neglecting everything else. So, I don't know. What about you? Is there anything that you've been motivated to do, or like you thought like maybe you wanted to work towards a certain thing, but for whatever reason you just like stop?
Yeah. Let me get my mascot here. Oh, he rolled off. Is there anything I've been motivated to do but stopped?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll say I was motivated to, work with Aiki Ken, um, doing the Aikido techniques through a boken, and then all of a sudden that stopped. It's not a disservice to the art. Maybe it is a disservice to the art because, I wouldn't proceed to a master level and then add to, in what way masters add to an art. But it's not like a slight to the art. It's not because the art didn't have something that I had. It was more or less extenuating circumstances like life here, moving the apartment, and then so it's an extra. It's an outside a perimeter level of martial arts that martial artists don't take into consideration, and that's your social circle, your personal life, and your professional life. If you don't take these things into consideration and you add and find a love for a martial art, you are not setting that dream, that love up for success.
Huh. So if you think you're not doing it perfectly enough, would you quit?
No, No, that's outside of, like, if you had a homeless guy and a Chinese master, no, not even a Chinese master. Let's exclude uh, ethnicity from this argument. A a Tai Chi master. Oh, I didn't even specify the martial arts. Sorry, Tai Chi master. A lot of things stem from China. A Tai Chi master comes up to him in the park and he finds a love for Tai Chi. So this guy is homeless. He's got no way. At some point, if that master was to say, I want to start charging, I'm going to take my time to my efforts to this art studio that's opening up for me 2 to 4, and that's where I'm primarily going to teach that art.
Yeah.
And his only in for that art that he's discovered a love for is where now the master is charging, because the master's got to make a living. So in essence, like, he's not setting himself up to take in that art, that time, that specific goal. So in essence, outside of culture, outside of ethnicity, outside of the style of martial art that you study, let's not talk shit about Taekwondo. Nobody wants to. Let's not talk shit about karate. Let's not talk shit about the striking arts versus ground arts versus soft arts versus meditative arts. If you're not setting yourself up for success in something that you found love for, forget it. It's just a passing, fleeting idea.
Well, I mean, I was talking to my Tai Chi master about this, and he said, back in his days, he practiced 8 hours a day, every single day.
How old is he?
I mean, well, now he's at like around 64 or so.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Where's he from?
well, I mean, I guess 8 hours a day is an understatement, I guess. But even then,
Where's
I
he
mean,
from,
like,
though?
oh, China.
Okay. China, 8 hours a day.
Yeah. Now, granted, I mean, this is also during the time when,
Wow.
the communists had taken over, and they had basically said that martial arts is a vestige of backwards cultural relics that has held back China for so long. And so basically, if you weren't doing like Mao
Statehood.
style Tai Chi,
Yeah.
like Mao style Tai Chi, like you would actually have to say things like, this big red sun is Mao Zedong, and he has saved us from blah 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 blah, whatever, some shit like that. Yeah, basically, you had to do that was the only martial arts you were allowed to do, and it was bullshit. There was no martial arts application whatsoever. I mean, it was only done for health.
Yeah. To control
like
the population.
yeah, like his master, because even though he was a government official who was in charge of verifying relics, and he was basically an expert in art, calligraphy, and like historical texts.
Cool.
Yeah, and he was a government official for this stuff, so he has to know his stuff. He has to know this sort of culture. But at the same time, ironically, the government said that this stuff was holding us back. And so, like, you're facing this kind of stuff to go through. I mean, you're facing these people who are coming at you, and he was in a position where he could kick everyone's ass, but he couldn't because he would have to kill them pretty much as they were coming at him.
Why?
Because I mean, there's an entire mob, of red guards coming after you and saying like, oh, well, you better repent because you're a sinner for knowing culture and history. Yeah. I mean, so these are idiotic times, but this goes to show you the motivation and dedication that these people had towards this art. towards what they were doing. Um, I mean, like, and you know, for my master to study under him for 8 hours a day, at least 8 hours a day, probably more than that, because back in those days, I mean, especially with China's um, entire industries were pretty much like non-existent. I mean, yeah, sure, you had like you
Yeah.
had factories and they're churning things out, but I mean, it's pretty much it was about as useful as the factories in North Korea right now, which is pretty much like they didn't do shit.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't until the 70s or 80s. Yeah, it was
Right.
not
Yeah.
yet the time.
Yeah. Yay, communism, right?
Yeah.
Control economy, woohoo. So yeah, I mean, like you hear about these stories and what they went through, and it's like, wow, that's dedication, that's a lot of motivation, and like I can't bring myself to do that.
You're not motivated by extenuating circumstances, so it's understandable.
But I feel guilty nonetheless.
You're feeling empathy,
I
empathy
guess.
for a love that men in American society are, um, you know, castigated for expressing. Yes, you can feel that for an art. You can feel that for your master. Um, it was very prevalent, very prevalent. Now, I'm not saying like whatever, surface level jokes, whatever. But what I'm saying is an attachment that everybody knows when you start talking about it. They can equally identify with some moment that they were suppressing or have suppressed in a love for something. So it's a love.
Yeah, but I mean, he also noted that in today's world, unlike back then where he had a ton of time to do this stuff, even though they did it secretly, right? They still did it nonetheless.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like
There's no
yeah,
catalyst for you now. There's
well,
no like you have to guard your art.
well, you kind of do. I think it's more of a there's more of a catalyst now in that sense because you have to guard that art now because it's much more rare, and the fact
Mm,
that no one really has that sort of skill level.
very true. Very true. The amount of
But
people does
like
not equal more practitioners in the art.
right. But like the thing is back then, I mean, for as much as, I like to make fun of the communists for, uh, you know, holding back China's economy for so long, um, one thing you have to give it to them is that everyone was equally poor. So, for better or worse, they were equally poor. So economically, there was nothing to worry about because it's not like your economy could like have a chance of improving at all. So what are you naturally going to do? I mean, that's why you could dedicate more time towards martial arts. I mean, your factory job wasn't going to pay you shit anyways.
But I think maybe what's not taken into consideration is a monetization of the art given 1980s after Green Berets, all this like birth of martial arts in America. Not to say that the people who studied in the 60s, 70s weren't valuable or present, but I'm saying like the big dojos and the Green Berets that returned from Vietnam and they're like, tenured service in the military. Basically, special forces returning nothing to fucking do, so they set up McDojos in fucking suburbs, and it birthed this what turned into fanaticism slash like this socialism with MMA in extracting the deadliest aspects of martial arts and injecting it into MMA.
No, no, I think that is definitely a concern. The McDojos and the monetization of the art. I mean,
Mm.
that's definitely something that Bruce Lee was attacking back then, even in the 70s, really.
Even though a
Um,
lot of people credit him with creating UFC,
yeah, well,
well,
not
like
UFC,
like
but
MMA.
like being the father of MMA.
Yeah.
I mean, not that he was the first one to combine different arts together. I mean, people have done that in the past for sure, but I think he was the only one that was open about it. Before that, you kind of had to make up a story of how you came upon your thing, or you had to say, oh, your master came up with it and he taught you this secret art form. I think it was covered in some episodes of Dudes of Kung Fu, that podcast. Really good. They were talking about how, um, for whatever reason, people who learn Chinese martial arts, they tend to want to trace it to some sort of lineage of some sort. Like there's a specific person, right? Like, oh, I have to be in the Yip Man lineage or the Wang Sun Leung lineage or something
Yeah.
because like that was the person who was really good at the art. Ironically,
Or whatever the
they
family status that person held.
exactly,
Define them as, yeah.
exactly. Um, but we're getting off track.
That's right. That's right.
No,
We're
that's all right.
circling.
No, I think these are issues we can talk about another day. Or actually, well, to be honest, the Dudes of Kung Fu pretty much covered it pretty well. So listen to their podcast.
Yeah, check it out.
But,
Episode 23.
but no, no. I mean, but back to motivation. I mean, like comparing how they had the time and the luxury to be able to do this. I mean, they didn't exactly have luxury in terms of like riches and all that, but luxury in time nonetheless to be able to do this. Whereas opposed to us nowadays, if we're not worried about working, taking care of the family or other things, we're still trying to worry about getting work or something like that. But then if you say take a look at Grandmaster Yip Man, for instance. Uh, oh, geez, where is this thing? So I'm just going to use this clip here. So, this is a clip from the Grandmasters. Um, and I mean, Yip Man, if you compared his life to us, right? How is it that he was able to dedicate his life towards the art of Wing Chun? Because everyone knew that he was really good at what he did. He kicked a lot of ass. But how was he able to do it? He didn't have to worry about the economic circumstances that most other people had to worry about. So, I mean, he just,
If,
went to learn the art, worked at it, and that was pretty much it. Like, what did he have to worry about? He didn't have to worry about getting a job. He was rich.
but I think people discount. So therein lies the idea of discounting is when you say he worked at it. We don't have a concept now of working at something. Everything now, clips, advertisements, your interest in games, your interest in women, your interest in a job, everything now is truncated. Everything now has this sense of like a finite amount of spark or sparkle to it that it just exhausts so much faster now. Working at something, persisting in an art, whatever it is, kudos to you. Dedicating years at something, even a relationship these days. When you give that much time to something, that's something that most people have no concept of, and everybody is a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a good point. Um, but I guess trying to bring this back to the technology aspect.
Yeah.
um, so, we talk about how robots are taking our jobs and they can do things better than us. In an age in which robots can now do physical things, like I think it was Boston Labs.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
MIT. Yep.
yeah, you saw them. They had this footage where this guy was basically poking this robot with a
Yeah.
stick, and it kept
Yep.
falling down.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, Sooner or later, it's going to get to the point of like, hey, this robot can throw a couple pan
Whoa.
cells, bong cells, and like,
Have,
kick the shit out of someone.
have you seen the recent articles?
No,
So they were privately purchased, Boston Labs. And have you seen the recent robot version of that?
no.
Dude, they are making it consumer grade.
Um,
It's like
y-
yellow and blue, and it's looking thinner, sleek. Like they're getting it ready for consumer level release. Like it's not this big ass black dog that you follow with a fucking like coiled cord and its battery pack, and you kick it down a mountain and you follow it with a little battery pack, like fucking 70s style communication wirelessly. No, this is getting to like where a private company bought it and they're trying to introduce it. It's moving now. Boston Labs with the mule, I think they called it.
yeah, it was called the Mule. Yeah. So, do you have a link to the article? Otherwise, I'm gonna have to like search this thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here we are on the internet talking about unsourced ideas. Um,
Yeah.
you know what I could do is I could look it up here on because it was an Imgur article, and they were like, "Hey, you remember that big black thing that they used to kick down hills? Look at it now." Um, but basically, like, so martial arts and technology. So in that same idea, a
Yeah.
subset idea was they just had a Japanese. I don't know if he was Iaido master, swordsman master on stage with a robot, AI software. They've trained this robot to cut exactly as this person. Do you want a robot war? Because that's how one gets started. I mean, they've trained, and I mean, with stop motion technology, take a look at Star Wars. And I'm not putting a plug for this goddamn game at all, but Star Wars EA Battlefront 2, some of the behind the scenes, like how they're like, it's not a matter of you have this, Sony ping pong ball with an iridescent mark on it that a field scanning camera can pick up. I mean, the kinds of technology that they're doing now, they've introduced martial arts into AI, into where you introduce a field. So it's, XYZ, and you've got a target that this robot is supposed to cut. Now it's a robot. You're not seeing it with like a little fucking head. It's like a machine factory arm, basically. And it just takes and it just cuts right across three apples, like samurai sword, fucking katana in hand. God, it's samurai sword. Katana in hand, cuts right across three apples. It's fucking amazing. But to circle back with the whole martial arts and technology thing, I don't think that has any human application other than you being able to spar with a robot at some point with, uh, Michael Fisher. Was it Michael Fisher, right? The
Not
chess.
sure.
Fisher was the last name. I'm pausing on the first name for some reason. Fisher was the last name. Chess versus the AI. There you go. That's the video right there.
Yeah.
And like, all right. So to me, this is something that humans. I don't know necessarily that is Japanese. I've only seen that in Korean, the samura cutting the bamboo like that. So I don't know necessarily that that's a Japanese demonstration.
No, it is a Japanese demonstration. The makiwara is what they call it.
Ah,
So
well, Koreans do it too.
yeah.
Uh, uh, and just the idea that, so right here, I mean, seeing that truncated rows, like you have passed down knowledge through family, through a wine glass period, through a wine glass mentality of passing down knowledge of cutting, and it's now being programmed.
Hold on, you just froze there.
It's no, I mean, it's. I'm sorry. Maybe I froze. Maybe I didn't. Um, it's maybe it's the. I
You were in
didn't see
awe
the
of
whole
the
video.
swords, yes.
They only had like a bit. Am I still frozen?
Um, no,
It,
I mean I can hear your audio at least, so just keep going.
okay, so uh, essentially, maybe it's like bandwidth and the moderator or something. I don't know. But essentially, like you have what can be digitized as family knowledge, as cultural knowledge. The idea that it's being put into robots, like, as far as what the martial arts practitioner can get out of this, perhaps you can get a better sparring partner. But I don't see practical application other than just showmanship of programming, and that's pretty fucking cool.
Right? Well, I mean, like in this case, right? Like the idea is that yeah, hey, the robot can slice really good, just like a master swordsman, but unlike a human being, it doesn't get tired. Okay, great. But then
What you skip out of that is that the human in that is likely praying afterwards.
right,
It's likely owing knowledge of this to past masters. There's an attachment, a temporal attachment backwards and forwards, regardless of skill. The idea of passing that knowledge and it having found its way to that one person so that they could become a master in that. The robot will have no sense of feeling with that. The robot will be, I mean, we're probably eons away from a robot conceiving of feeling that. So, yes, we can show it that. My point being, humans also can demonstrate that level of robotic where they siphon out the most efficient way of doing it. MMA. When time and time again these fights go to where person's on top and they're just either chain punching, Chinese martial arts, chain punching, boom, 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 or they're just smashing on the dude's side of the face. Like, they're in essence demonstrating mechanical habits with human proficiency, but they lack emotive content. That's where, ideally, yes, that's like a can versus should argument. Should you show AI how to do this, and to what end? You know, what for? Okay, yeah, you got a robot to cut across X, Y, Z, boom, with X amount of accuracy. The human doing that will have an emotive feel. The robot do that will have a more less awe-inspiring, more fear-based reaction, more guttural. Like, that shouldn't do that.
Right, but at the same
That metal
time,
shouldn't
though,
do that.
yeah, but we learn martial arts in a certain fashion. We're kind of trying to model ourselves after robots in a certain way, right? We like we train our bodies to do
Our
certain
masters didn't know
things.
robots.
Well, I mean, outside of the fight, no, but I mean, like during the fight, right? You can't let your emotions get the best of you, otherwise you're gonna lose, right? And
There you go.
that's where the robots win.
There you go. Yes. So this is where I'm hesitant to say, but some Chinese mysticism, some of this whole metal, wood, fire, ice, maybe hard
The five elements. So you're talking
mysticism,
about
right? Void,
wood,
hard, earth.
water,
Yeah, it depends who
fire,
you ask.
and earth.
Yeah, it depends who you ask, really. It's a very it depends who you ask. I mean, you go like, I mean, there's like some people say, no, it's only this way. But then there's other people that will say, no, but it's been adapted to this way, whatever. It's that aspect, that void aspect of it, where you absorb knowledge to know. There is no stopping yourself from taking in deadly knowledge without formal training, without real time on task, without real reflection on your physical self that you've put in that time. Because that time, that time that you put into the art, that time that you put into training, that time that you like just grind, your body will show that. It reflects a higher self. It reflects a more perfect human. Perfect, not necessarily separated from this idea of metal human versus like flourish. We'll get into that later. The technology aspect of it, the distillation of what was deadly from that. What can we learn from that? And you put it back into a, how did that make you feel? You know, would you consider doing that again? Would you consider pinning the opponent, holding their face to the side and smashing their temple until they blacked out? You know, like mechanically, yes, that worked. Would you consider walking up to someone on the street, as we talked in the last podcast with the knockout game, and just cold cocking someone? Yes, the mechanics, your swing on point. You totally knocked that old man out. Great. You know, this is where forward and backward or reverberations actually count for the effect that you have on what you present. So if you represent like in, I mean, it's in some of the movies, like where, oh yeah, this is some dude representing this martial art. Oh, he totally beat his opponent. Wow, that martial art is so powerful. Have you seen it? You know, like, I mean, that was in Ip Man 3, I think.
Oh God, are you really referencing one of the Ip Man movies?
No, but just like the idea that you're a representation of what you study.
Okay, yeah.
And if you get caught demonstrating that, I heard it off chance tonight. It was like you can't afford the litigation behind it. I think it was in Daddy Daycare or something. I don't know. It was some weird aspect, like some off, just random happenstance thing, that clip that I heard, that it's like you can't afford the litigation of a fight. Um, like not only are you demonstrating that you have no knowledge of your art if you're using it in a fight, in a street fight. In a street fight, you should be using certain tactics. In a street fight in America, you should be calling the fucking police. You should be backing away. You should be, neutralizing aggression. You should be way before the fight. You should be like, not even like, you don't just bust out with your secret martial art, fucking hammer fist the dude's fucking heart, cause a heart palpitation. Dude has a medical history in his family of heart problems, and his heart fucking explodes. Like, you have to recognize, now bringing it back to technology, that dude that studies, goddamn, I can't even think of like any sort of like backyard art right now. Backyard fucking Shorin Ryu. Dude that studies Shorin Ryu fucking hammer punched an assailant's heart and stopped his heart. Dude has died, and now dude who studies Shorin Ryu is now in prison. Like, that's how you chose to represent your martial art. Your day in court will come. You will pay the family a sum, and you will go to jail. That's it. That's what martial arts is in America. So, like, you don't... The technological aspect of that is that you will get told upon. You will get reported. There is no hiding that. The police will come. They will find you. They will see you've been taking martial arts. They will ask you. You will be beholden to answer that. There's no hiding it. So the fact, like, it's just saying that now, with the prevalence of the all-seeing eye of, what they said in the House of Cards, when you impact one person, you impact the 10,000 people that follow them. Not literally, they didn't literally say that, but that was the paraphrasing of the idea. So when you're impacting one person, it's everyone that follows them on social media. They could say
when you're talking about the legal issues, and
yeah. But the social media ramifications of you demonstrating martial art.
It is a different society nowadays than it was when, back when Yeatman was still alive, and basically if he killed one of his disciples accidentally, not that ever happened, but I'm just using Yeatman as an example. But
not that was ever recorded.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Strike that from the record.
No, actually, there were oh, jeez. My Hing just told me about this one guy. Oh crap! There was a person who actually, he had actually beat up his own disciples accidentally and killed them. Whether or not it was accidental is another issue, I suppose. But his disciples were killed by his hand nonetheless. Actually, there's a Tai Chi master who is really good. Now, this was an accident. Just simply working at the art and practicing with his son. No, I'm sorry. No, his eldest disciple and his daughter both were these are actual accidents. Damn. Like, he somehow just miscalculated, or something, they did something wrong, and in that instant he didn't strike them or anything, but they just landed in a certain way, and yeah, they died pretty
Yeah.
much. Um, but you're talking about the legal ramifications, and you're getting at the crux of why we should even learn martial arts, which is another aspect of the motivation thing. But I'm just talking about
Oh,
like motivation in terms of just doing or dedicating yourself to anything to that level, right? Like I was saying with
when you say you're talking about that, what are you talking about?
what do you mean?
So you said you're talking about the level of dedicating yourself at any point. Like, what aspect are you referring to? Are you referring to the fact that these days people just don't have time to do that, or are you talking
That's
about
one
these days
aspect.
people
That's
don't
one
do that?
aspect. I mean, like there's the economic aspect of, the fact that you have to worry about making a living before you even consider,
Yeah,
uh, you
age.
know, yeah, age is another factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Socioeconomic, age, location. In Georgia, I had uh, I had taekwondo, I had karate, I had McDojos, and then I had that one-off chance of Choi Li Fut.
Well, I mean, let let's say in that instance, right? Like you were in Georgia, maybe you wanted to learn a certain art, but it wasn't around, whatever that may be. So one of the other people's, one of the other elders in our group, the Tai Chi group, he studied with our master's master uh, not too long actually. What he had done was he at the time was living in Guangxi province, went
Mm.
all the way to Shanghai, learned under him for like maybe a month at best during the summer, and then went back to do his job. He worked at it, and then he went back constantly back and forth for like years.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, talk about dedication right there.
Yeah.
That's also dedication.
Yeah. How do you even find someone like that? You know, like at the time that they're so like, let's say this is 70s at best.
Yeah.
You know, how do you? There's no internet. There's no like send a pigeon across the fucking Pacific Ocean to find a Chinese master that will teach me. You know what I mean? Like,
You know what though? I mean, yeah, you know what? This is during the day before the internet, but I swear to God, ever since joining this group, it's crazy. It's like I entered a Chinese martial arts novel, if you've ever read any of those. um it like they start talking about like, oh hey, that person over there with that style, that group, and they talk about all these different stories of what goes on, and then like, the it's kind of like a Shaw Brothers movie, man, where it's like, oh yeah, so and so with this one style had made this one offset comment and it pissed off this other master over here, and ever since then they've been dueling ever since, and both of their disciples will never be at peace, and all this beef just gets started, right?
mhm.
It is seriously like that. It's kind of cool, but but no, I mean, like, you enter this world and you will find these people somehow. Like you will learn about them one way or another.
I think the idea that martial arts and technology are joining is an idea that should be moderated ultimately, because you truncate these experiences that we reference in the preamble here. That's what I'm assuming this is. Like you skip the fact that Joe over here studied with a master that was from that traveled all around fucking Vietnam, China, Japan, challenging different martial arts. And this guy basically understood his master. And when he comes to your school, he's taking that master's knowledge there. Like, you start to skip these elements when you incorporate, like, what's the fastest speed bag, what's the best glove I can use that's going to allow freedom of mobility, as well as other aspects that you're looking for, like, so you're not looking like a Ninja Turtle in one hand, but also that, like not necessarily like functional progression regarding quote unquote technology in martial arts. Technology in martial arts might be a forum that's been set up by a small school, or like you're showing here, succinct media interpretation of interactions in the past.
Wait, can you elaborate for a bit? Sorry, I was muted for a bit.
No, yeah, no problem. So, the idea is not to skip what has been a cultural cornerstone for each ethnicity. Asian, European, not to skip those South American, Irish boxing, not to skip those cornerstone aspects of it in the incorporation of technology with that martial art. I think that once you start to distill things into a efficiency aspect where you're only concerned about the end result, where you're only concerned about the effect that your gloves are going to have on your opponent, or the effect that your gloves are going to give you, that feel of that real reverberation without causing any actual solid impact, or training gear that isn't as restrictive. The idea, like, technology doesn't necessarily extend to software, hardware. It extends to objects that we use as a tool to perform a function. It extends to devices that we use to gain these ideas that we're gaining ourselves. So, like, technology and martial arts, like, that could also include audiobooks. Let's say there was an audiobook by a SEAL Team 6 person that was disillusioned after leaving the military. Heaven fucking forbid. Disillusioned after leaving the military, and it contained all these fucking, like, okay, strike here if you want to kill someone, cut here if you want to, do someone in good. If you're looking for someone, hit them here at a corner, sort of thing. Like, all these, like, tactics that you're basically giving the essence of what it is to be deadly. That, to me, is also technology in martial arts. Even audible.com, that SEAL Team 6 person releases their book on a major media platform, let's just say, not audible.com because fucking whatever reasons. That person releases their platform on major releases, and it hits a vast array of people. That's how I can only assume that this that this striking point game thing has started. This dim mock based tutelage has spilled forth into technology and has reached lesser people, and they skip the whole moral equation of can versus should. Should I include this technology? No. They're just going to do it for kicks. They're just going to knock some old guy out on the street. They're just going to knock some chick out on the street. They're going to use it to hijack a car. You know, like this shortcutting of mano a mano, that is also technology and martial arts. Stuff we should talk about.
Well, I mean, we should, yeah, definitely concentrate on it on another day, because once again, we've gone away from the motivation aspect.
No. All right, so.
Well, because I mean, because when you're talking about technology, I mean, like, what's not to say that a pole is not a technology? The wooden dummy is a form of a technology, something that's being used to improve your skill in art. It's no different than, like, say, let's say if you have a robot now.
That's like theorem versus like idea. That's like theorem versus theory.
No. I mean, like, because these aren't like.
That's not like, you know, the plastic dummy that you hang on the wall versus the wooden dummy that stands on its own. Right.
It's still.
Anyway, what you're saying is absolutely true. We shouldn't be moving away from motivation. So the motivation thing. So, like, all right. So what motivates you shouldn't be an aspect of getting the most deadly aspect out of that martial art. It shouldn't be whatever has the most technologically inclusive aspects, like, oh, they've got an app for their dojo. You know, oh, they've got Bluetooth in their dojo while I study. You know, oh, they've got their app syncs up with fucking Map My Run, and your progression can be based off of how much you rent. You know, like, your motivation should not be defined off of technology. Your motivation should not be defined off of what martial art you study even to begin with. Motivation to me seems like a personal aspect. It has nothing to do with martial arts or technology. But no, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to, like, you know, get at the root of what we're talking about now, but to allow what gets you into what we're hearing now, what we're talking about, what gets you fired up, to allow something that can affect your intake of that motivation, your intake of that martial art, your intake of that time that you develop with that. You know, that is outside of technology, I would think, but that is something that is found through persistence, through going through it. Do those 1,000 cuts in Aikido, in Iaido. Do those 1,000 kicks in Taekwondo. Do those 1,000 punches in your fucking boxing. You know, we don't necessarily have an option when it comes to motivation. But we also don't have an option when it comes to societal effects. Whether that's location, like we've been talking about, you know, the dojo's too far.
Right.
Or whether that's your family doesn't approve of you studying a Chinese martial art. Your family doesn't approve of you studying a Japanese, Korean martial art. Your family doesn't approve of violence. Motivation in martial arts is self-fulfilling. It gets itself there. Once you give into it, there is no stopping point. There is no like with motivational martial arts, you just have to set yourself on the path. The problem is finding the key to get into the fucking arena to find the path. The problem
Okay, so
is
what do you think are some steps that we can do to set up this path for people who are having trouble getting on it, or even, I mean, like, I mean, I guess we can talk about how we can find some of these things in a later episode, but like how, well, if you start right and you're having trouble staying motivated,
okay, there you
what
go.
are some things that you can do?
There you go. Because if you were going to say trying to get people on the path, like they should study martial arts, I don't think you should study martial arts if you're not already on the path. If you're not already giving yourself to the idea that another culture's another culture's methodology, another culture's
Well, culture
catharsis.
aside, I mean, any sort of, I mean, culture not specific to a group of ethnicity of some sort, but culture as in like just any sort of group culture of any sort. I just want to put that out there. But go ahead.
Okay, yeah. You're right. You're right. Because you can't necessarily attribute. Yeah, whatever. So, getting in the path. So, uh, honestly, tried and true every time getting in the dojo. Now, regarding motivation, do you set yourself up for success? Um, that really comes to have to like. I mean, you really have to weigh in. Are you letting familial aspects affect you? You know, if I don't succeed, my family's going to think X or Y of me. If I don't go to martial arts, my family will think X or Y of me. You know, you have to really get in there. You have to take an ownership of how your body feels, what you appreciate about what you learn from it for yourself. You have to own those lessons. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going in this to get a fucking six pack," or "I'm going in this to bang hella bitches," or "I'm going in this to like um, appease my father because he's also a black belt," or going in this to like because I'm a fuck up, and if I don't, then I've got nothing else that will stop me. Like you have, I mean, without any, it has to be the most obvious thing to you, like a lighter being sparked in a dark room. You have to see that spark. You can't just be concentrated on the door where you think the direction of the door is and miss the spark that happens in the room. Yes, you'll catch the flash of the light. So like that's basically saying you can't just show up to the dojo and just have like a fuck it, I showed up, you know, but I'm hella like I'm pregnant or I banged a bitch and I didn't wear a condom or I didn't do this assignment or I'm behind on these bills. You cannot show up in the dojo, fucking the school. You can't show up to where you study like that. Your motivation has to be self-directed. You have to find what it is, what it's going to take to turn your head towards the light.
You know, it's funny how you talk about the self-directed motivation. Um, like last time, I think we had talked about how certain people they get motivated because they get into the flow of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they get into the flow of certain things, and then they find that motivation as a result. I think it's maybe easier to get into the flow with martial arts, but even then it takes a while, right? Like let's say, for instance, runner's high. It's exactly like runner's high. I don't get runner's high at all. I think this thing is like I hate running.
Okay.
I hate running. So this thing about runner's high is not for me.
Yeah,
Like
but
I
dude,
can
there's some real
keep
data.
going at it. Yeah, go ahead.
There's some real data. So how
Yeah,
much do you run? Okay,
not
there you
enough.
go. There you
Yeah.
go. So with now my personal experience just recently in the past couple of weeks, technology martial arts, like I saw a dude, I'm motivated to get the body he's got going, my sister's boyfriend. It was superficial weight just in the face and all that. And I was like, God damn. And he's like, yeah, dude, I've just been running. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I just picked up running. And then he showed me his shoes. He was like, dude, you gotta get some good shoes. Now that's just his claim. That's no like fucking like we're not making this claim on the podcast or whatever. But for me, that was enough. That was what I needed to like. That was my catalyst. Boom, motivation right there. You know what? Even though I hate running, I hate that aspect that I need to do something in order for Y to happen. I need to do X for Y to happen. That's technology right there. That's programming. That's fucking you put in the effort, you get the result, X and Y. I didn't want that to be the case, but I did. I started doing it, and the runner's high does come. It's a biological process. You do it, it happens. Whether it's happening,
I'm not
that
saying I'm not denying science.
there could
Like
be
runner's high does exist, but I don't get it. Is the
there
thing.
could be an amount, is what I'm saying, that you need to do, and that's what I'm saying about motivation.
Yeah.
There could be a finite amount for you, like you could take 1,000 punches to the face before you finally feel, fuck, that was the last punch. Fuck, I'm done boxing. Or, damn, this feels good. Like, there is, there are predetermined qualitative amounts that we define for ourselves, but there are also indeterminate qualitative amounts that we have yet to find through adventure, through persistence, through testing, through that motivation that you can't know until you put yourself through that test.
So what is the defining line between the actual like
The
what's the
catalyst for,
defining line between giving up when a person gives up
yeah.
and when a person like finds that thing, gets in the flow and sticks with it?
Guess fucking what? When you think you're ready to give up, you aren't. Never. Never. Like, dude, like in this running that I've been doing, like every fucking time, dude, I go back to what like my past experience, like with the Nate, like with just basically my past experience. And like I feel those moments. I feel those like, God, if I could only just stop, if I could only just like not do this, if I could only just like like maybe I'll just like walk a little bit, every single fucking time I've been running lately, every time I pass that, and I only pass that through a measured level of persistence. What bare minimum is it going to take for you to keep going? What bare minimum is it going to take for that pendulum to swing? Because a pendulum doesn't have a choice on to swing more or less. That's us. That's us when we try martial arts. That's us when we try a fucking punch and we fail. That's us when we try a cut and we cut too way too hard and we throw ourselves, or like we try to get out of bed and we throw our back, what bare minimum will it take for this action to resolve? And you will find that it is very low cost. It's very low cost. Like David Goggins in that Tom Bilyeu YouTube that you sent.
Yeah.
You just silence the fucking noise. That's what you do. You just silence the noise. So as you're running, silence the noise. As you're training, as you're doing that Qingyi, as you're fucking feeling your legs vibrate, as you think, you're giving all your all. Dude, seriously, when you've given all your all, you won't be able to give anymore. Done. Done. Your legs will not get up. That's when you're done. That is the end point of motivation. And the point that the people talk about with strength trainers, they will say that that is when you start to give. That's when masters will say that's when you're doing the truest martial art, is when you're shaking, is when you're vibrating. What is it going to take to get you there? You know, like when I run, like it's not like, can I do this run? It's what now. My mentality is shifted to what now can I do to silence the noise, to give just enough to get this done. I want to give this. And that is where your motivation lies. Bring yourself to the point where you say, I want to give this. Give to martial arts.
Okay. No, it's a really good point. I think that's actually a good point to end it at. And I think maybe for the next episode we can talk about the motivation on how we get started.
Okay.
All right, cool. Let's end it right here.